our chase for the life, and that was our obsession with it because we didn't have it. You know, the reason why guys or rappers are drawn to Scarface and movies like that because they see themselves as the villain, and you see someone come from nothing and make it for how long, for however brief they make it. You know, that's something that draws you in.
Storytelling is one of the things that we need for a classic. YFM is back again. So we wanted to go ahead and talk about what makes a classic. What makes a classic album? Why do we always say, yo, that's a classic, that's a classic? And other niggas be like, man, that shit is garbage.
It's all garbage.
All right, I heard you, it's garbage.
So we want to go ahead and break it down for our new series. What is a classic and how do you make a classic?
You say in Reasonable Doubt, it's like a come up, you know, it's come from the streets and he goes,
yeah.
I really feel like it's just like a story, not even a story, but it's like a bunch of songs about a dude who just, like you say, he wants to come from he's coming from the streets and he wants to become corporate, but it's still like a bunch of street songs. I don't hear the come up in this album. And we had spoken about it before. I feel like the come up for Jay-Z personally, I didn't hear it until maybe, you know, volume 3, maybe the Rock La Familia album. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like this is a bunch of songs of a dude kind of just bragging about how he almost, you know, he's bragging about how he didn't die in the streets, how great he was in the streets.
Even that, if you look back to Reasonable Doubt, listen, like even the songs that were like more braggadocious and out there and about money were really more so directed at like the system in America. Mm-hmm. Like, you put us in these situations and you handcuffed us. Mm-hmm. And you put it behind our back, and we still made our way. You guys took the music, took the drums, we beat on the table. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, you stole the, you made like blackface, we created soul music. You gave us scrap, we made soulful.
So, Big Homie Wayne.
Yes, sir.
You don't feel that Reasonable Doubt is a classic?
No, I don't, man. I don't hear the classic in Reasonable Doubt. I know, man. Send your hate mail in You Feel Me podcast at gmail.com. Send all your little hate mail. I don't care. I'm never going to read it. But I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. Jay-Z is he's one of the greatest rappers of all time. He is the greatest rapper. Well, I don't know. I think Kendrick kind of taking the throne a little bit, but he's one of the greatest rappers of all time. Me personally, I feel that American Gangster is my favorite Jay-Z album. I think that's the best Jay-Z album. In all honesty, I think Kingdom Come is a very underrated album. That may be an episode we need to do, underrated albums that people don't, you know, understand are really great albums.
Or don't consider.
But I feel like, right. I feel like Kingdom Come is a really great album. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people thought it was rushed, but I feel like Kingdom Come is better than Reasonable Doubt.
Why?
I know. Okay. For me, Jay-Z has always been that person, that rapper that's just like, you know, he's Superman. He could do it all. You know what I mean? He lost like how many 38 bricks, got 30 something back. I don't know, whatever it was, that number was. You know what I mean? Like, he's always been like that person. Like, you never seen him sweat. Like, you never seen him fall or falter. He's the Rock of Gibraltar. You know what I mean? He's just that person. Like, even if he is like, you know, in some shit, like when he stabbed what's the new name?
Yeah.
What's his name? Steve Stout. He stabbed Steve Stout or some shit like that had happened. You know, you never really see him sweat. Like, you just know, like, he's going to get through. He's going to make it through and he's going to be fine. He's always been that person. In Kingdom Come, I feel like he was crying out for help. I feel like he was doing too much at that time and he couldn't really handle it. He was a president of Def Jam. He was signing all these artists like left and right. A lot of older artists on Def Jam didn't like him.
Trying to get him a payday. Yep.
Right, LL Cool J and DMX, they were like, yo, we got these new albums coming out and you ain't doing no promotion. And they are like the heads of Def Jam. You know what I mean? But he didn't push them. He pushed Rihanna. He pushed Neo. He pushed all these other people. You know what I mean? So it's, and I feel like he was doing that, president of Def Jam. Him and Beyonce, he had that relationship going on with Beyonce. They were just dating at the time. And then in Kingdom Come, he was talking about they were breaking up. You know what I mean? He had the song called Lost Ones on there talking about, you know, you go do your thing, I'll go do mine. And we just don't have time for each other, you know? So there's that. Something happened with his nephew. I think his nephew had gotten killed. And then, you know, Def Jam was still knocking on his doors like, yo, we want you to make another album. We need you to make another album. You're Jay-Z, you Hove. Let's get in the booth again, you know? And I feel like all these things just started happening to him. And when I listen to Kingdom Come, to me, it's like a cry out for help. He's like, yo, I'm doing everything and I'm still doing this rap shit and it's just toppling all over me. But I'm also Jay-Z and I can't let you see me sweat. I can't let you see me fail. I can't do that. And I hear he has a song in there called Hollywood with him and Beyonce. And you think it's like a cool little, nice little party song, nice little, R&B techno-ish type beat. You know what I mean? But listen to that song, man. Listen to it, man. He's talking about like how all these, James Dean and all these other people who got killed at a young age and leaving. He says something like, die young, leave a good looking corpse or something like that. There's a lot of songs on there where you just like, damn, like he's spitting, he's rapping, but it sounds real commercialized, but it's also him just being like, yo, I can't do this on my own. I need somebody to come in to intervene and help your boy out. He's like screaming out for help, but also he's still on his Superman shit. He's still on his like, I'm still rocking the building. You know what I mean? He's still on that type time, And so I feel like that makes one of his Kingdom Come one of his greatest albums, one of his dopest albums, because that's what makes a dope classic album to me, is when you could put like your life into it, when you're not afraid to like, yo, look at Eminem and the Eminem Show and all the shit that he was going through. Everybody's best albums is when you take your life shit and you put it on wax. It's when you could write it out and say, yo, this is what's happened to me, this is how I feel. Like it's almost like a breath of fresh air, it's like a relief off of their back, and you could tell, you can hear it. And that's why I think Kingdom Come is one of his dopest albums, man. Y'all need to listen to it again and try to hear it with my ears. You know what I mean? Just try to take a listen to it. But yeah, Kingdom Come, I think, is better than Reasonable Doubt. I'm gonna say this before I kick it off to you. Reasonable Doubt has great songs, and I know what you're thinking. If it's an album full of great songs, then that means it's a great album. It's a classic album, and not necessarily, because we just did an episode, the 10 most underrated artists. One of my artists was Big Sean, and I love Big Sean. I love how he flows, but I also said that, yo, I never really like a full Sean album, but he makes great singles. He makes great songs, and he can make an album. You can make an album full of great songs and it not be classic, i.e. Drake. Like, if you want to go there, we can go there. And I can tell you, like, he makes great songs, but it's just a bunch of songs on an album doesn't make for like a classic, cohesive album. And that's what I think Reasonable Doubt is. It's just a bunch of dope song, classic. Can't Knock the Hustle is my favorite Jay-Z song, right? I love it. The first song on the album. Love that song. Dope ass songs on this album. Just the classic. I just do not hear the classic. I personally believe that Jay-Z is the one who said, like, it's his first album. Classic should have went triple. He's the one who's sprouting off saying, yo, this is a classic album. So we're just like, you were right, Jay-Z. This is a classic album, and we like it very much. Like, it's some robotic shit that we're just taking from him and agreeing with. I don't hear the classic in it, man. But I'm off my soapbox. Fearless, what do you think about it, man?
So in comparing Reasonable Doubt to Illmatic, I would say that I think that the reason why people consider Reasonable Doubt a classic is because it had great length. So it was literally like 59 minutes long. You had multiple songs in there that actually were hit singles, but also you could hear the story of a man that is straight fresh out the streets and trying to make it out, and to go ahead and move into more of like that corporate lifestyle, and to like experience and show you the money and how he's utilizing the money to achieve his goals, which is the really what a lot of motherfuckers wanted to do and be. Certainly like in the 70s, where people were selling like massive amount of heroin and shit like that in New York City, it was like, yeah, you could be doing all that stuff, but you have all the flashy clothes, all the nice cars, all of that shit. And what you do is that you utilize that money once you're done with like your splurging phase and you become a grown man, use that money to build businesses, to build empires. And I feel like Reasonable Doubt is in the foundation of like Rockefeller. It's the foundation of so many beautiful albums that we received. And the first song is a hit. The last song ends beautifully. You have him and Biggie on a song. You have Can I Live? Like a lot of the stories that you wanted to hear from Jay-Z, an artist that's new and that came from a drug lifestyle, you hear within this album. Plus, you also got to think about the time it came out. It came out in 1996. 1996 was the time where a whole lot of motherfuckers was just like hustling and starting to like break that mode of like selling crack. It was like in the middle of like the crack like the crack hitting like the streets and like the hustler mentality really hitting the streets, but at the same time having the law turn against you, where if you get caught with crack, you get 5 years mandatory, which was something that was actually championed by Joe Biden and the Democrats, because the crime was so bad in New York, they were just like, fuck it. If you get caught with crack, you going to jail for 5 years minimum in comparisons to cocaine or any other drugs. So this story, Reasonable Doubt, explains that. When you look at the class, the Illmatic, and compare that as a classic, I think Illmatic is universally thought of as being a classic album. But why? Well, it starts off with the Genesis, which is a dope ass beat. It just comes off like it's an actual, like you opening up the Bible, you opening up a great story, right? It starts off with that song. He's talking about, sitting on the steps. I'm just a nigga, like, with a finger on the trigger. Like he's explaining to you like Queensbridge, and bringing you into his life, right? Exactly. You can say the same thing with Reasonable Doubt. No, you can't knock the hustle. Talks about him saying like, yo, you can't knock the hustle because we came from this and now we're making it more beautiful. We're making this shit Black excellence. And I feel like both albums start at such a great point, and there's not a drop off. Illmatic is 10 songs. Reasonable Doubt is 15 songs. So Illmatic has a beautiful playlist of songs. There really isn't any skips on there. Even Life's a Bitch and Then You Die comes at like number 4 or 5, right? But Reasonable Doubt, it has more along the lines of songs that you can play on the radio. It's not like Illmatic. Illmatic has songs that you can play on the radio, obviously, but like Reasonable Doubt had like 4 or 5 songs for the radio. And I don't even think that was on purpose. So when you comparing both of these, I understand you don't like Reasonable Doubt, you like Kingdom Come. That's great. But when you compare both of these albums, how do you think that they compare in terms of classics? Because I feel like they match up very well.
I don't. I feel like Illmatic is the classic, and Reasonable Doubt is just like somebody's first album, right? So in Kingdom, I'm sorry, in Reasonable Doubt, you said Can't Knock the Hustle was more of him explaining coming from the streets and going more corporate or trying to do something different in a hip hop game, right?
Well, that's the point of the album. I'm saying Can't Knock the Hustle was more along the lines of a song saying like, I just came from the streets. And you can't knock everything I did to get here because I'm just trying to make more money like my corporate masters. That's how the album starts, with that message.
I got you. I feel like Can't Knock the Hustle was more braggadocious, but it was lyrically braggadocious, and he did explain, he did explain what it is that you're saying, and your perception is correct, but I still think it was created to be more of a braggadocious song. I don't hear you say in Reasonable Doubt, that he let me pull it up real quick. I apologize. You say in Reasonable Doubt, it's like a come up, it's come from the streets, and he goes, I really feel like it's just like a story, not even a story, but it's like a bunch of songs about a dude who just, like you say, he wants to come from he's coming from the streets and he wants to become corporate, but it's still like a bunch of street songs. I don't hear the come up in this album. And we had spoken about it before. I feel like the come up for Jay-Z personally, I didn't hear it until maybe, volume 3, maybe the Rock La Familia album. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like this is a bunch of songs of a dude kind of just bragging about how he almost, he's bragging about how he didn't die in the streets, how great he was in the streets. And, his come up, I didn't hear that until maybe volume 2, volume 3, a couple albums after, right? Yeah, go ahead.
What's wrong with having a bunch of songs? Why is a bunch of songs can't be considered a classic?
Nothing. Just like I said, because it's just a bunch of songs. There's no cohesiveness in it. There's no story. I didn't hear the story in this. There was no story to me. Just like a Drake album. It's like just a bunch of songs. Yes, it's dope. Yes, they got played on the radio. That's great. But there's no meaning. There's no concept to it, like in Illmatic. Let me talk about Illmatic for a second. For me, I've never been to New York before. Never been to New York, right? When I turn on Illmatic, I can hear New York. I see exactly what I see. When I hear this album, I can see New York. I can see what Nas is talking about. I can see, like, if I can watch all these movies from New York. You got your Once Upon a Time in Americas and all these other movies or TV shows that you watch that show New York. I see that when I hear Nas, spitting these lyrics.
I wrote the review for Illmatic in the Source magazine. I didn't know that it was going to change hip-hop. I only knew that it changed me with one listen.
Illmatic's the album for the 90s era where I was growing up. The stories he was telling was something I can relate to. Illmatic will always be number one.
Coming from Dallas, Texas, Illmatic was my secret. It was my weapon. It was the steel that sharpened my steel.